The elder statesman is well seasoned. The elder statesman is very discerned. The elder statesman is very alert. The elder statesman shares wisdom. The elder statesman. 1974, the Lord opened the door, hence the year I was born. Never been here before. All the things that I saw, memories that were formed. EQ above norm, battle weathered the storm. I'm a believer in whom you call Jesus. Never a man pleaser, so couldn't trick deceivers. All glory, all credence, ones who give resistance, call heathens. Nothing about race, who's godly, who's demon. Human beings all sin from the evil that's within us. No one's holier than thou. Judges scowl with their brow. Goal to sin no more. Very different. There's no more points to prove, but I'm still proving points.
Rags to riches, what it called. Through love's epitome.
Ivan.
Medieval slang. Satan's glass, justice chance. They told this tale.
Let's go. I'm a whole other breed, in a whole other league, at a whole other pace, at a whole other speed. Only driven by my needs, not my wants, please degree. You can't register the concept if your mind isn't free. Student of this thing of ours, about 300,000 hours. Translation more than qualified, the pen pure power. Not too many dare to enter metal with this here. Fear is the shedding tears if they lower down a tear sear. In my circle, we all squares, bunch of family guys together, well knit and made our own family ties. That was wise. Ivan.
Історію карточний дом и свято верил, что сделай крепким нам и больше верить.
From the 10452, home of the Elliot. If the face looks familiar, them selling. When weed was illegal, we had the most legal. Yes, cars, trains, buses, rappers, comics, mad people. Summer nights on them corners, the bounce squad and speakers. Threw out with exclusives, all the newest heaters. Trooping to the fever, no less with us than 20. Outside stashing reinforcements, got plenty. Wasn't heavy on the Henny, it was Alizé or EJ. Not much a drink or favor, but I'm a thinker. Little history for those that be shrouded by mystery. Trials and tribulations, all praises got the victory. I be trying to warn them. I do. I really do. Hey. Listen, they dwell all around us, some naked to the eye, but most times the person by your side, how they disguise. Your gut, it talks to you when it senses any harm. An internal built-in alarm turned on the caution warn. You ignore it and end up in a whirlwind of regrets. Every time your stomach bubbled, you dismissed all the threats. Was your spirit speaking, but you chose violence tweaking and caved into pride. Now you locked for 1,000 weekends. Once you fly off the deep end on negative, you would deep end. And someone coming friendly doesn't make them your friend. A little sharing of some gems, not too many comprehend, cause they stubborn, bullheaded, and they One, two, 1, 2.
There we go. There we go. We are live. 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 Welcome once again. Do you see what we see? We are live. And tonight's presentation is, are we still subject to experiments? Are we still subject to being experimented on? And I'm going to share some things tonight in tonight's presentation. Peace, Tito. Salute. I have quite a few clips to share this evening in tonight's presentation in regards to human beings being experimented on by their own government, citizens within the United States of America, within Canada, and other countries across the planet. Peace, brother. Salute. Salute, my brother. Being experimented on. I shared in an earlier presentation how it is documented, proven facts, documented that intelligence organizations within the United States of America, they conducted experiments on its own citizens for mind control. MK Ultra. Right? Aside from that, there's been tons of other experiments and testings that's been done on American citizens. And we're going to go through some of them tonight and go back and recap also on the MK Ultra with a couple of documentaries that I found. And then have a discussion and tap in on where are we at today with it? Is it still going on? Do we still see it? Do we still see the results of mind control? Is it still being practiced? We're going to talk about it. So let's get into the first clip. Now, of older men and women, older brothers and sisters that have experienced going through a form of experiment from the government. And what's intriguing about this one is that a good majority of the people are ex-military, right? So this is an interesting one. It's about 15 minutes. I will let this whole clip play. The longer ones that I have for the presentation, I'll probably play about 10 minutes of it or whatever. But as always, everything will be available in the description at the end of the presentation. As I always say, if you believe, praise God. If you do not believe, praise God, you have your liberty, you have your freedom. All I'm doing is presenting the information. You take the information and do with it as you see fit. This is not a point of my opinion. This is not me saying any of this. This is me presenting actual accounts of people that experienced it, have gone through it. So if you believe, praise God. If you don't, praise God, you have your liberty. So this is the first one we're going to go through. And it's in regard to St. Louis.
Tonight, we're shining a light on a dark and largely unknown chapter of American history. During the Cold War, in the name of preparing for the Soviet threat, the US government conducting human experiments on its own people,
Hold on one second,
unwitting
y'all.
Americans without their knowledge or consent.
Hold on one second. My apologies. I thought it came on. And here we go.
Tonight, we're shining a light on a dark and largely unknown chapter of American history. During the Cold War, in the name of preparing for the Soviet threat, the US government conducting human experiments on its own people, unwitting Americans without their knowledge or consent. Children, some of them orphans, were fed radioactive oatmeal. They were told they were joining a science club, promised a quart of milk a day, a trip to the beach. Years later, they testified about the after effects, reporting lumps on my arms, my stomach. And then in Tennessee and California, pregnant women were given a radioactive cocktail at top universities to see how it crossed the placenta to their unborn babies, some later suffering miscarriages, illness, and cancer. These are not conspiracy theories. They are documented government experiments. And now at News Nation, we are asking, what were they doing in St. Louis? I went on the ground as residents tell me about a mysterious fog sprayed through their neighborhood.
So you heard that. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are not conspiracy theories. Let's continue.
When they were kids, a fog that moved like a ghost, clung to their skin and settled over more than 10,000 Americans who lived there.
They didn't ask for our permission. We didn't ask for them to spray us. My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
They're waiting us out. They're waiting on all of us to die.
The U.S. Army now admits they sprayed a chemical containing cadmium, a known carcinogen, but they do not admit harm. Residents tell me they've been getting sick, some of them with rare cancers, and they're asking, was there anything else in that spray? I investigated what was in that fog and why the truth may still be buried. The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog.
It was summertime and it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It wasn't the weather. It was an eerie smoke descending from rooftops, rolling from the backs of trucks.
Regular flatbed truck, but it had a big machine on the back. And it had a big nozzle that really sprayed a fog you couldn't even see through. It was that thick, and it really, we felt it as it would adhere to our skin. And as far as the guys on top of the buildings, they tried to portray them to us as maintenance workers. But we was like, what is a maintenance worker doing? And basically a hazmat suit, and they had masks and goggles.
In the 1950s and 60s, in secret, the U.S. Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide into the air of a St. Louis housing project, a largely black neighborhood called Pruitt-Igoe.
It was a lose-lose situation for us in Pruitt-Igoe. We were subjects. We were subjects.
They didn't ask for our permission. We didn't ask for them to spray us. My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
We're standing at where Pruitt-Igoe used to be here in St. Louis, and it's hard to believe more than 10,000 people used to live here. As we bring our drone up, you can see it's mostly just an empty lot now, overgrown with trees. This used to be filled with 33 high-rise buildings. It was all demolished in 1976. And according to the National Research Council, St. Louis was chosen for spraying experiments because it had similar characteristics to Soviet targets like Moscow in terms of population density and terrain and proximity to a river.
If you're thinking of selling your house, want to know how much more you could be getting by using this brand new way to sell?
The government now admits to a secretive series of Cold War tests, including one dubbed Large Area Coverage. More than 30 tests conducted across the US and Canada, spraying zinc cadmium sulfide from planes, rooftops, and vehicles to simulate how a biological attack might spread, all to prepare for potential warfare against the Soviets.
Many of us been in the military and had top secret clearances. We know how it works.
We have died for America. We have fought for America.
You are a veteran.
I am United States Air Force veteran.
Dr. Starks, you're a veteran as well.
Yes, I am. I'm an Air Force veteran also.
Is there a sense of betrayal here?
Definitely, definitely.
They want to know if those secret tests have anything to do with what they're observing with their own eyes.
I lost my 2 older siblings to cancer. I lost a brother last month.
I've been diagnosed recently with a rare form of lymphoma.
I had cancer of the left kidney, had partial removal of my left kidney.
News Nation reached out to the Army for answers. They provided a one-page response. It says the Army's own Center for Health Promotion and Preventive Medicine investigated in 1994 and found inhalation exposure would not pose a health risk. They also cite later corroborating reviews, including a 1997 review by the National Research Council. Perhaps they assumed we wouldn't read the NRC's 380-page report, but we did, and the Army's statement doesn't show the full picture. In that 1997 review, the National Research Council explicitly says repeated exposure to zinc cadmium sulfide can cause kidney or bone toxicity or lung cancer if levels are high enough. And they admitted they couldn't fully assess the risk. Why? Because some Army records remain classified, it says, for national security reasons. More troubling, key Army exposure records were missing. And when the NRC asked the Army to supply them, the Army said it couldn't find them. Finally, the NRC considered conducting its own study, but concluded it wasn't feasible. In short, it did not test the site, collect samples, or test residents, and they didn't have access to all the data. Their review was based...
So, just to pause for a quick second, this was done in the projects. Some projects called Pruitt-Igoe in St. Louis in the 50s. Those projects are no longer here. They were demolished, I think, in the 90s. Could be wrong, but I think in the 90s, like early 90s, they were demolished. And these are people that lived in that area, lived in those projects, and describe what they experienced. And you see that a few of them are former military, subject to being tested on in the projects. Projects. What is a project?
On what the Army gave them and what the Army either could not find or withheld. The Army ends its statement to News Nation by saying, quote, none of the reports contained evidence of a radioactive component to the zinc cadmium sulfide dispersion tests. Residents say the secrecy and delays are no accident.
They're waiting us out.
They're waiting on all of us to die.
We're on our way to meet with a researcher right now who has dedicated her career, decades, to declassifying documents and trying to figure out what exactly happened here in the city of St. Louis and what exactly was in that spray. Across the country, the government conducted secret Cold War experiments in plain sight.
It was so secretive that we're really just now sort of digging out from underneath us to try to understand the scale of it.
And Dr. Lisa Martino-Taylor helped uncover many of them.
We know that they were giving radioactive cocktails to pregnant women. We know that they were feeding radioactive oatmeal to children in state schools. They've admitted to those things, and they won't release the material related to St. Louis.
It's true. American children in state-run institutions like the Fernald School were fed radioactive oatmeal as part of studies by MIT sponsored by the Atomic Energy Commission. You can see some of the documents Dr. Martino-Taylor worked to gather and declassify on MIT letterhead describing experiments on human subjects. The children, some of them orphans, were told they'd be joining a science club. They were promised a quart of milk a day, a trip to a baseball game, to the beach. A copy of the 1994 congressional hearing shows those children, now grown, describing being told the oatmeal was just vitamins and recalling the health problems that followed: lumps on my arms, my stomach. Pregnant women were also unknowingly given radioactive iron at top hospitals in Tennessee and California to study how radiation crossed the placenta, some later reporting miscarriages, illness, or birth defects. A class action lawsuit resulted in a settlement in the 90s.
Do you believe the U.S. government sprayed some kind of radioactive material on the residents of St. Louis?
I believe that they did. There's so much contextual evidence that points that way, and I spent years looking at this.
She says her research reveals the men who designed and oversaw the St. Louis experiments were some of the top experts in radioactive weapons.
We know that the people who designed the study, who oversaw the study, these were all the radiological weapons experts who were looking at open air radiological weapons.
One of them, Brigadier General William Creasy, was head of the Army Chemical Corps, the branch leading America's secret radiological weapons program during the Cold War. He brought in a scientist named Philip Layton, who was the Army's leading authority on using radioactive particles in aerosol form, fog-like clouds designed to drift over enemy terrain.
So the very man who designed this spraying experiment in St. Louis was an expert in using radioactive fog against the enemy.
Yes, he was the expert, the expert.
Then she says there's the timing.
He was fired just 3 weeks before he was set to retire.
And now he's becoming an industry whistleblower.
They were looking for a city to test their offensive weapons program. They wanted to do it. They expressed this in documents. St. Louis was their chosen city. That was their analog city to Moscow. And they wanted to do this in 1953. They showed up in 1953 in St. Louis.
But there's one document Dr. Martino Taylor has never been able to unearth. It's still classified. The Joint Quarterly Reports detail the spraying experiments, all written by Layton himself. The last one is missing. It's called Joint Quarterly Report 5, and we tried to get it. Our team filed a Freedom of Information Act request on May 5th of 2025. By law, the government must respond to a FOIA within 20 working days, but it's been more than 3 months. With multiple follow-ups, nothing. The silence is what's called a constructive denial, and renowned activist Erin Brockovich says it reminds her of cases where the truth was hidden. So, Erin, what is your reaction to this News Nation investigation? Did this shock even you?
Absolutely. I think my comment was, are we WTF the kidding me? I mean, what the hell? It's awful. I mean, biggest thing, and I've learned in 30 years, is it's always the cover-up that enrages people, that hurts people. And I've learned that communities can handle the truth. What they don't handle and where they'll tip a scale is the lie. So this has been a cover-up, and I think that modern-day agencies owe it to them, the truth.
Do you think there's been a lie here, a cover-up here?
It sure looks that way.
Our investigation now drawing attention from lawmakers, including Congressman Wesley Bell of Missouri.
When American citizens have been impacted and exposed to chemicals specifically because of the federal government, I think that we should do, as Democrats and Republicans, we should all do the right thing, make certain to make these folks whole again, get them the compensation they deserve and the treatment that they need and also deserve.
It can happen to you. Don't get duped that it can't happen to you. We didn't think it was going to happen to us. We was babies, kids. It can happen to you, too.
Representative Bell is now fighting to get Pruitt-Igoe included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. That would provide payouts to Americans who can prove they were exposed to radiation during the Cold War. But for Pruitt-Igoe residents, there's a catch. Because key records remain classified, they haven't been able to prove what they were exposed to.
What do you want everyone to know about what happened here?
The truth. Whatever the truth is, we want to know the truth. I don't think we're getting it now.
In the meantime, residents say all they can do is wait, hoping someone finally listens. When will you give up this fight?
Never. Till I'm cold and dead and buried in my grave.
We asked the Army point blank, was there a radioactive component to that spray? It's interesting that they didn't just say no. Rather, they said, quote, none of the reports contained evidence of a radioactive component, pointing us to reports like a review by the National Research Council. But a close read of that report shows even the NRC admitted they could not fully assess the risk of the spraying, because when they asked the Army for key records, the Army replied the documents were either classified or were missing. The Army could not find them. These residents feel the government is waiting them out. The people you just heard from are the ones who are still here or are well enough to speak. And I have to tell you, one woman we were supposed to meet with died before we could get to her, suffering from multiple cancers. Her daughter asked us to keep going, and we will keep pushing for information, including those classified documents.
Thank you. So there you have it. That's the first presentation in regards to, are we still subject to experiments? Are we still being experimented on? A whole community, a whole neighborhood was sprayed with cancer-causing agents. And they described the fog and how they felt it on their skin and to the projects. They clearly admit to it, the military, but say there was nothing in the reports that there was anything radioactive. This goes on every day. It's not just these type of situations. What happened with this community in St. Louis. This happens all across the planet, all across this nation, all across this country, and the countries across the planet. Chemtrails. That's one of them. That's the most popular, if I may say. In my opinion, that's one of the most popular that's always spoken of. The fluoride in the water. That's another one. With all things that have been done against humanity, specifically, but let's just deal with this country within the United States of America, with all the different experiments that's been done and conducted against people that live in these neighborhoods. It's a wonder why people are still alive. It's a wonder. So many things used to kill, to depopulate, to destroy, and the people still alive and thriving. That's a wonder. That's God. So let's get to the next one. This is a compilation I found. I think I have a couple of these, but this is one in particular that is very interesting. Well, I have 3 documentaries, but this is a compilation that I found in regard to government experiments done on its own citizens. So just to give an idea of how many more experiments have been being conducted that people are not aware of. I want to say salute to everybody that's tuned in. Thank you for tuning in, for tapping in. We're live here every Saturday, by the grace of God, going over a variety of topics pertaining to this life, to this realm, and things that people should be aware of, such as this. That's why the thumbnail for this video is what it is. So when you see the thumbnail, you know why it's there. The whole thing that was done with the vaccine during that time. It's all an experiment. It's all part of their plan. This is a part of their strategy and how they get people under control. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, reaction, solution. Order out of chaos. Get them to want exactly what it is that you want to use against them. Get them to want it. Like people demanding military presence to be under martial law. But that's another topic, maybe for another day, for another week. Let's continue now with, are we still subject to experiments? And this is a compilation that I found. Again, everything that's shared in the presentation tonight, whatever's presented, will be available in the description at the end of the presentation. So let's get to this one. All right.
Hey YouTube, Jim here. Welcome to Top 10 Archive. Conspiracy theories surround almost any government. But with the United States being as influential as it is, it seems to be the target of many. Of course, not all conspiracy theories are true, but some can be quite persuasive. But the US has actually admitted to experimentation on its own citizens, which is the highlight of today's video. This is the top 10 US government experiments done on citizens that we know about.
Right, that we know about. But this is 10 experiments done on the United States' own citizens, on their own citizens.
Number 10, Gila. Imagine being injected with cancer without your consent. Sounds like something that would happen somewhere else, not in the United States, right? Wrong. In 1952, a researcher at the Sloan Kettering Institute injected live cancer cells, called Gila cells, into prisoners at the Ohio State Penitentiary. His name was Chester N. Southam, and he also went on to inject healthy women, knowing that they could cause cancer. He did this to many patients, and at one point was put on probation, but the consequences were mild. So mild, he became the vice president of the Cancer Association at some point. Number 9, Operation Sea Spray. When you hear Operation Sea Spray, you might think of a nice ocean breeze. I do anyway. But in the 1950s, this operation was actually part of an experiment to test how possible biological warfare was near the West Coast. The government decided to release a bacteria into San Francisco without telling the citizens, just to see how it would affect them. Even if this were just a common cold, this would be...
Now, I'm not saying this is what it was, but it's amazing that San Francisco is one of the largest population of a particular community. The military has a weapon that they can release during war that will make soldiers want to commit homosexual acts with other soldiers. It's called the gay bomb. Please look it up yourself. Please look it up yourself. It's not a part of my presentation for tonight, but it is real. Please look it up yourself. So this operation that was being conducted in San Francisco with this spray, I'm not saying it is, but what if? That's a fact. Right. Peace, sis. Yeah, look it up. That's a serious thing. Look it up. The gay bomb. Please look it up. Or remind me later on when I'm finished with the presentation, and I'll look it up and present it myself. It does exist. It is a real thing.
This operation was actually part of an experiment to test how possible biological warfare was near the West Coast. The government decided to release a bacteria into San Francisco without telling the citizens, just to see how it would affect them. Even if this were just a common cold, this would be a huge deal. But it killed several people. The result was that it was unlikely that a biological weapon could be hugely successful in the area. Family members of a man who died sued the government for gross negligence, but lost. Number 8, the subway bacteria. This experiment was called a study of the vulnerability of subway passengers in New York City to covert attack with biological agents. Wow, why they didn't just call it the subway experiment is beyond me, but I digress. They released Bacillus globigii, a black pigmented bacteria.
Never sue the other driver after a car accident. There's a better way to get paid a way bigger check without having to.
All throughout the tunnels of the New York City subway system. Compared to the San Francisco experiment, the New York subway proved to be a prime location for a biological agent attack. A similar experiment was also carried out by the Army in the Chicago subway system. Number 7, the Vanderbilt radioactive experiment. Post-World War II, researchers became more and more interested in radioisotopes and their effects on the human body. One particular question they had was how it could cross into the placenta of pregnant women. So, what did they do? They experimented on pregnant women without their consent, of course. Researchers at Vanderbilt University gave 829 pregnant women in Tennessee vitamin drinks with radioactive iron. At least 3 children died years later from cancer and leukemia. 4 babies died from cancers, and most of the women experienced rashes, bruises, hair and/or tooth loss, and cancer. Number 6, Operation Big Buzz. In 1955, the government released millions of mosquitoes, specifically Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, into the state of Georgia to find out how well they could be used in biological warfare. Mosquito bites don't seem like much of a weapon, until you realize this species is known to carry yellow fever. They weren't purposefully infected with yellow fever, but their presence alone increased the chances of a bite resulting in cases. It wasn't the last time they did such a thing either. They also introduced mosquitoes just to study biting and travel habits, and fleas as well to research the same topic. Number 5, Project Chatter. As fun as the name of this experiment is, the actual practices are less than quirky. This experiment ran from 1947 to 1953 and was run by the US Navy. They started testing truth serums, substances that could extract confessions and intelligence from people when necessary. At the time, they were considering using it on Soviet spies. Chemicals used to attempt this include mescaline and scopolamine. In the end, it seems none of the chemicals got them any closer to the truth. Number 4, tuberculin infection. When researchers experiment on adults, it's one thing, but children are a whole different story. In 1908, 3 Philadelphia researchers infected children with tuberculin, a protein derivative of tuberculosis. As a result, some of these children were left permanently blind, and others had painful wounds and swelling. The worst part is how they refer to the children in the study. Instead of test subjects or children, They referred to them as material used. Brutal. Number 3, Willowbrook Experiments. Still shocked that people would use children in experiments? Brace yourself for another. While trying to find the cure for hepatitis, researchers in 1970 took children from the Willowbrook State School, an institution for mentally handicapped children. That on its own is extremely unethical, but they didn't stop there. They then injected them with experimental drugs that didn't work. Most children contracted hepatitis anyway. The officials said it was natural, since the disease was prevalent in the institution and they expected the patients to become infected at some point anyway. Number 2, Tuskegee Syphilis Study. You knew this one would be on the list. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study is one of the most well-known examples of U.S. experimentation on its citizens. 600 African-American men were chosen to be in the study. They were tested for syphilis, of which 399 were positive, but were never told. For 40 years, they watched as the disease persisted and manifested. Even after penicillin was used to treat it, the participants were denied access. All the victims got from this, after suing the government, was free burial service. Number 1, Measles Vaccine Experiment. When the measles vaccine started being tested in 1990, doctors from the CDC wanted to know if it could work to replace natural antibodies in babies. They tested it on thousands of babies in developing countries. The results weren't good. The number of babies who died is unknown. So now let's talk about how it affected children in the US. After researchers knew the effects, they started testing it on minority communities in Los Angeles. When they saw that African American babies were dying at alarming rates, up to 3 years after getting vaccinated, they stopped. The CDC later came forward saying the parents of these children never knew they were getting an experimental drug not yet approved by the FDA.
Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Rewind, come again, selector, right? Does that
An
sound
experimental
familiar?
drug not yet approved. The CDC later came forward saying the parents of these children never knew they were getting an experimental drug not yet approved by the FDA. Thanks for watching. As a U.S. citizen myself,
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So there you go. That's a compilation of 10 documented instances where the US government conducted experiments on its own citizens. That's 10 that are documented. How many more exist? Lord only knows. What the brother's talking about. Yeah, all these different things, brother. Absolutely. All of them. All of them. So this documentary is about 40 minutes, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. Play about maybe 10 minutes of it because I have 3 more. But it'll be available for you in the description. All right. So let's get this next one. Oh, before I do that, just for the sake of it, just for the sake of it, this was back in 2005, so 20 years ago, January 15th, 2005, from the BBC, U.S. military pondered love, not war. The U.S. military investigated building a gay bomb, which would make enemy soldiers sexually irresistible to each other, government papers say. You think that didn't go through? You think because they say that they pondered upon it, that they didn't do it? Yeah, absolutely, boom. Absolutely. So I'm going to get into this next one. This next documentary. Like I said, it's about 40 minutes. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Play about 10 minutes of it. These are not theories. These are actual conspiracies. These are actual plots, schemes, plans to devise evil and harm and hurt to other individuals, to other people. And as you notice, there's always a particular group of people that's always targeted. This is not a theory. It's an actual conspiracy. Are we still subject to experiments? That's tonight's presentation.
The Fifth Estate.
Good evening. I'm Eric Malling. 9 Canadians who were the unwitting victims of CIA brainwashing experiments are suing the United States government. But so far, the Canadian government has done nothing to help them.
If I were in charge of a government to whom 9 citizens that we are suing for have been brainwashed without their knowing, have had their lives impaired, and have it done by a foreign agency, undercover without the government of Canada knowing it, I would find a way to help those people instead of hindering them.
4 years ago, there were some startling revelations about the activities of the CIA in Canada. The American Intelligence Agency had paid for a series of brainwashing experiments under a project codenamed MK Ultra.
Man, you're 62 and you run circles around 35-year-old guys. How do you get in?
The tests were conducted in secret in the United States and in Canada at a mental hospital attached to McGill University. Experimental drugs, including LSD, were administered to human guinea pigs. The patients were never told that their treatment was part of a CIA experiment. 9 Canadians are now suing the US government for $1 million apiece. They charge that their lives were disrupted forever as a result of the brainwashing. Despite the fact that the CIA operated secretly in Canada to fund these medical experiments on Canadian citizens, the federal government in Ottawa has joined hands with the government in Washington to hold back vital information which might at last reveal all the sordid details.
In Winnipeg, Val Orlico spends a lot of...
I want you to keep in mind, this is 1984. 1984.
...of time tending her plants. It's one of the few hobbies she has left. She used to devour books and write long letters. Now she can't concentrate on a book for more than a single page, and writing a letter is beyond her. She's on medication 24 hours a day. If she wasn't married to David Orlico, an NDP member of Parliament, she might never have learned the full story of what happened to her.
I better get out the tomatoes and the green pepper.
In 1956, suffering from depression after childbirth, Mrs. Orlico was referred by her Winnipeg doctor to a top psychiatrist in Montreal. Unknowingly, she was about to become part of a cruel CIA experiment, codenamed MK Ultra. In Langley, Virginia, outside of Washington, stands the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency, protected by walls of secrecy as high as the trees. Stored inside computers like this one is what's left of the CIA files on the MK Ultra project. Convinced the Soviets and Chinese had perfected brainwashing during the Korean War, the agency sought to perfect its own techniques, both to protect its agents and to use as a weapon.
Who did you meet with in the safe house?
The CIA man overseeing the project was John Gittinger.
There was continued pressure put upon anybody within the agency in connection with trying to explain or understand brainwashing. So we were charged with rather an elaborate attempt to try to find out chemical, psychological, any kind of means that people could use to influence the behavior of the people.
In Montreal, on the side.
So whistleblower basically is a part of the conspiracy until they gain some sort of conscience, and now they go and commence their campaign to expose.
Out of the mountain.
But just imagine how much other things that they're aware of or that they participated in before reaching the point of saying that's enough, I'm gonna expose the whole thing.
Overlooking the city stands an ancestral home bearing a name worthy of an Edgar Allan Poe horror tale, Ravens Crag. Donated to McGill, Ravens Crag became the Allen Memorial Institute for the Treatment of Mental Illness. Here the CIA channeled money for MK Ultra, Subproject 68, which became a real-life horror tale. The project chief in Montreal was Dr. Ewan Cameron, world-renowned chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at McGill and director of the Allen Memorial Institute. The CIA secretly funded the medical experiments through a front in New York City called, of all things, the Society for the Protection of Human Ecology. Documents show that the agency had been impressed with earlier work done at McGill in sensory deprivation, work that was useful in designing sophisticated torture techniques later on. But at the time, brainwashing looked even more promising, and Dr. Cameron was the perfect one to carry out the work, an American citizen with a world-class reputation operating outside of the United States. Dr. Cameron certainly had the credentials. At various times, president of the Canadian, the American, and even the World Psychiatric Association.
These are the days and hours are the occasions.
In an address to colleagues from around the world, Cameron showed that he certainly knew the potential of the human mind, for good and bad.
And it is his mind, no less, which may destroy mankind.
Val Orlico came to the Allen for her postpartum depression.
Everybody in the hospital was very much in awe of Dr. Cameron, and he strode the halls like a giant. And people would say, oh, there but for God goes God. And to me, I thought, how could he possibly ever take me for a patient? Who am I? I mean, this great man who's done all these marvelous things. And boy, I better work hard and I better do everything that he tells me to do. And, you know, I don't want to lose this opportunity to get well.
Like Mrs. Orlico, Mrs. Janine Huard of Montreal came to Dr. Cameron depressed after childbirth. The depression was made worse by a hearing problem that coincided with the birth of her child. She, too, was in awe of Dr. Cameron.
He was a very, very impressive man. And I was told he was the best doctor in North America. So he would look at you a few minutes, ask you a few questions, and then proceed with the treatments.
But I never saw him once in all the times that I saw him that I wasn't afraid. Every time I went down to his office, I would shake with fear. And every time I'd see him coming down the hall, I'd shake with fear. But I adored him.
Dr. Elliot Emanuel knew Cameron.
He was an authoritarian, ruthless, power-hungry, nervous, tense, angry.
Sounds like a cult leader.
Man, not very nice.
This is the Lamborghini Huracan Storado, and this is the Hennessy Velociraptor.
At Ravenscraig, Dr. Cameron went further with drugs and electric shock treatments than any of the US researchers in the MK Ultra project dared. His aim was to wipe the mind clean. Then he would implant new messages by forcing the patient to listen to a hypnotic repetition as many as 250,000 times. This was called psychic driving. Most of the drugs used in the program were experimental and some dangerous. There was the tranquilizer Artane, a paralysis-inducing anectine, and curare, which pygmies tipped their arrows with to paralyze victims. Bulbocapnine, another experimental tranquilizer, and lysergic acid diethylmide, the hallucinogen LSD. In her room at Ravenscraig, Mrs. Orlico waited for her first treatment.
Well, I saw a tray with hypodermic, with a needle, a syringe, and the card on it had my name, so I looked a little more closely, and it was lysergic acid diethylamide. And my husband was a druggist, and I knew a lot of drugs, but I'd never heard of that one. And so I phoned a friend, and who was a psychiatric nurse, and I said, "Do you know what it is?" And she said, "I never heard of it." But she had a friend who was a psychiatrist. So she phoned her friend, and she called me back, and she said, he said that this stuff causes poisonous psychosis. She said he said not to take it.
So again, the rest of that video that was just shared will be in the description. So that special documentary was done in 1984, but this woman was going through that situation. Them two women were going through that situation in the 50s. And you see that was done by the CIA, and it was conducted in Canada. Here's another documentary or news special presentation from 1979. Again, on mind control. I'm gonna play about 7 minutes of this one, and it will be available in the description. This is Mission Mind Control, 1979.
This is the story of a 30-year search by U.S. intelligence agencies to perfect mind control. Some of those engaged in that search have agreed to talk about it for the first time. One said, "I think every last one of us felt sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line." The search would be endless. From brothels, an agent says, "We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom," to the mystical rites of a magical mushroom ceremony performed by an Indian shaman, to a Spanish bull ring. The bull has had electrodes implanted in the brain and is controlled by a scientist. There would be victims. One intelligence agency tried to peel this man's mind back to reveal its deepest secrets.
I've lived through it. I've lived through it.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, "It was fun, fun, fun." This is the story of the search for mind control.
ABC News Close-Up, Mission Mind Control. With ABC News correspondent Paul Altmaier.
Here's a brand new, better way to sell your house. So if you're thinking about selling anywhere in or around the Trumbull County area,
commercials and all that.
Mark, it's been ages.
To tell you, regular beer. It's that good.
To feed him. Dry formula has just
Story that we know.
know what to feed him.
Now get Cycle 2 in 25-pound bags.
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that we know. Right. But these records that we've uncovered don't tell the story. They tell pieces of it.
This is a story that has been told in bits and pieces. This is an attempt to pull most of it together. We know we don't have the full story. We do, however, have some striking new revelations and insights. The story begins here, just off the nation's front yard, the Mall. The buildings behind me were the headquarters for the World War II Office of Strategic Service. It was here that the first halting steps toward mind control began. The shaper and molder of OSS was General Wild Bill Donovan. He said of his group's work, "We may have made mistakes, but we were not afraid to try things that were never done before." In this anything-goes atmosphere, Donovan appointed this man, Stanley Lovell, a Boston industrialist, to break new ground in many scientific and technical fields. Donovan called Lovell his Dr. Moriarty, after the fiendish professor in Sherlock Holmes. Lovell liked the name and posed for this Saturday Evening Post photo. He later wrote of his OSS job that it was, quote, to stimulate the PEC's bad boy beneath the surface of every American scientist and to say to him, throw all of your normal law-abiding concepts out of the window. Here's a chance to raise merry hell. It was in this atmosphere that the search for mind control began.
Raise merry hell. In other words, go berserk, do what you want, use these people as you choose, do whatever you please, because you'll have them under mind control. Why is it a focus of mind control? To control somebody's mind, to control how they think.
This bizarre man would be an active participant in that search over the next 2 decades. His name is George White, an OSS captain who had formerly been with the Bureau of Narcotics. In his diary, seen here publicly for the first time.
So he's a wizard. He's a warlock. He was with the Bureau of Narcotics. This is a specialty.
White left a legacy of the darker side of American intelligence work. He received his early OSS training at the British-run school at Oshawa, Canada, the same school where Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, was trained. White referred to the school in his diaries as the Oshawa School of Mayhem and Murder. Mike Burke, former OSS colleague of White's and now president of Madison Square Garden Center.
Very compelling.
British-run school at Oshawa, Canada, the same school where Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, was trained. White referred to the school in his diaries as the Oshawa School of Mayhem and Murder.
Mayhem and murder. Just let that sit. This is a school that teaches you mayhem and murder. A school, a place to be educated, on evil and murder.
Mike Burke, former OSS colleague of White's and now president of Madison Square Garden Center.
Very compelling fellow, mysterious fellow, almost mystical fellow. He was fascinating because you knew something about him, but not enough about him to really get a fix on him. He also knew a great deal about the swifter elements of society, the gamier side of life.
Real quick, I apologize. I said the 80s, but this is 1979.
And he was very impressive in his technical knowledge of the underworld, so to speak.
He said, one of our men gets beat up. He says, you have to act real fast and teach these guys a lesson.
Charles Siragusa, a former narcotics officer and friend of White's.
He'll come around, he says, and break your kneecaps. And with that, one guy laughed. And George would always have little Billy with him. And this one guy saw us naked. George White turned around and whapped him across the neck with it. Then he picked up a pool stick and started beating everybody up.
He made his point.
And he made his point.
George White was not a man of understatement or subtleties. His boss at OSS, Stanley Lovell, referred to him as deadly and dedicated. In this note from White's diaries, it says, call Lovell regarding TD. TD was a rather transparent cover for Truth Drug. George White worked with the Truth Drug Committee here at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in the nation's capital. They experimented with mescaline, scopolamine, and marijuana on unwitting victims. The committee soon learned there was no easy panacea, no truth drug at this stage. But White and later colleagues would not stop trying. The goal remained the same. As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against...
So controlling an individual to the point where he would do our bidding against his will. You'll commit the most heinous act and you don't even know what you're doing. It's because you programmed to do it. You don't even know what you did. Mind control is being under a spell. Mind control is being under a spell. A spell has been casted on you. Mind control is radio programming. The same song played 40, 50, 60, 70 times a day. Every 15 minutes, the same song over and over and over and over. It's mind control. That's spell casting. There's different levels to it. You wonder why there's murder rates so high in certain neighborhoods. This is all from experiments. This is all from experiments.
And such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation. But it was a discovery here in Basel, Switzerland, at Sandoz Laboratories by Dr. Albert Hoffman that led the intelligence agencies of America to believe that they had found the panacea.
There's a simple brain release hack anyone can use to fight memory loss almost overnight. Almost no one knows this, but
The discovery was lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. The film that you see is considered by many experts to be the closest illustration of the effects of a hallucinogenic.
It was one of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew anything about.
John Gittinger, recently retired chief psychologist for the CIA. This is the first time Gittinger has been interviewed publicly.
You could
disable a whole city by putting a very small amount on a water supply. After all of these years of us, those of us who involved in then looking for this secret drug, this was the only thing that began to look for the first time like it might be something like that.
The CIA's interest in LSD was intense. The worry was that the Russians would get hold of it.
Were the Soviets into LSD?
I'm going to have to say I'm sure they were, but if you ask me to prove it, I've never seen any direct proof of it.
But at one point, intelligence information received from Switzerland said that Sandoz Laboratories was about to put 100 million doses of LSD on the open market. And it caused enough concern within the agency that the United States was prepared to buy the entire supply. However, a slight mistake had been made. The mistake is made public for the first time.
I just found out on a new CIA document that there were no such large quantities of LSD on the market.
Joan Marks has filed numerous Freedom of Information suits against the CIA and has unearthed much new material. He is the author of The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, a history of intelligence agency work with mind control. He is a consultant for this report.
What happened is that there was a military attaché in Switzerland, an American officer, who got milligrams and kilograms mixed up. In other words, he made a mistake of thinking 1/1000th of a gram was the same as 1,000 grams, which is a mistake of 1,000,000 times. So when the CIA got the intelligence that there were 100 million doses on the market, in fact, there were 100 doses.
The man who would oversee the CIA's research into drugs and most of the agency's behavior programs is this man, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist. Dr. Gottlieb declined ABC News' request for an interview.
A chemist, a warlock. So yeah, that's a fact. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if I'm not mistaken, it was first developed in Switzerland. Yep. That is a fact. So I have one more, but that'll just be available in the description. Right. So are we still subject to experiments? That's the question. Are we? What do you think? Are we still subject to being experimented on? It's so much broader now. I got a couple of things to talk on in regards to it before closing it out tonight. Again, salute to everybody that's here. Those that are still present, those that were here and left, salute. I appreciate you. So yeah, we still being experimented on, huh? Are we still subject to experiments? The thumbnail to this presentation, when you look at it, you see what it is and you know. We went through one. We went through an experiment on so many levels. So we have this MK Ultra, this mind control, is done through certain narcotics and repetition and things of that nature. Repetition. Again, the same music played over and over and over and over and over and over and over, non-stop. Non-stop. It's funny, I seen a person say how every kid in New York sounds like Batman. Or a variation of Pop Smoke. This is crazy. That's from mind control. Influence is mind control. That's another form of mind control. Influences. They influence you. You trust them. You trust them, you'll do what they say. Where do these influences come from? Where do they just pop up at? Where do they come from? Out of nowhere, just super multi-millionaires. Super popular. People fainting, crying. And all you do is act silly in front of a camera. Mind control. Drill. New York, London, Chicago. Everything is kill, 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 kill. That's the influence. Murder. Murder. That's the influence. Murder. Murder. No murderer shall enter into God's kingdom. No murderer shall enter into paradise. So who's in control of this music industry? Because all they do is make the kids do everything contrary to God. Who's in control? The influence is kill, 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 drill, drill, drill. And then you wonder why you see the results that you see. Music is a tool also used for mind control. It's sad. There's viral videos of little girls in a car behaving themselves like women would behave themselves. Mind control on the children. This is why they prey on them. They're more impressionable. You an adult doing certain things, that's mental. A child, and you introduce them to a certain lifestyle and keep pressing that from a child, they will continue in that into adulthood. Just as in the opposite, where God said, you train up a child in the way they should go, and they will never depart from it. So as it is for the righteous and the negative, it's the same. Social media, social experiments. Propaganda. Different things that you see on the news and you get enraged about. Experimenting, seeing what triggers you. What's going to get you erratic, emotional, out of character. And then they continue to push that to get you like that, to get you angry. It's like The Kingsman. That's a dope movie to check out for reference. First one and the second one. Very dope. The first one more I'm speaking about, especially when you see the violent scene in the church. Experiments, problem, reaction, solution. They bring a problem, they stir the pot, and then they see the reaction. They see what people do. And then they come with a solution. You have a problem. There's a sickness. Everybody's getting sick. This amount of number of people is going to die. This is serious. You start seeing curfews and restrictions in travel. That's your problem. Now the reaction. People going to buy all the toilet paper. This is what was happening. People starting to complain, starting to lose it, depression. Here's a solution. All you got to do is take this. It's not approved, but just take it. We had to speed it up and get it done so y'all can get back to what you want to do. That was never done in my lifetime. Never. So imagine the feeling that everyone felt. That's not aware of how they play. Problem, reaction, solution. And now you have people that regret having done what they did and being fooled to get ahead and take that, right? Take that, take that. Like right now, different cities that are, the grounds of gang activities and warfare and shootouts and stuff like that. You have the music bragging about these areas being the realest and the most homicides, XYZ, and everybody's trying to outdo one another and show that my city is the city. No, my city is the city, or my borough is the borough, or my town is the town that gets it popping. And it's like a competition to be evil, a competition to commit murder, a competition to take away lives. And it's in the music, it's in the videos. You have law enforcement that's afraid. They don't want to lose their life. Their mentality is let them off each other. And as always, not all, because there's always that small percentage in everything. There's always that small percentage. Not all, but the majority. And then if they have a family, you got to look at it. Can you blame them? When somebody doesn't want to listen, you just got to let them be. But then you have the overzealous ones that do the things that they do, and next thing you know, they're involved in a case of shooting a suspect. Trying to show out. But with all the crime and different things that's going on in these areas, you have older people or people with families that they want the National Guard to go there. Because the cops are not doing anything, and especially if it's some type of drug activity or something, they are definitely involved. So why not have them come? This is the mentality of the people. They actually fell for it. So it's like a volunteering of being put under martial law. But look at it. Is it something that is needed? Look how many people keep dying, if those numbers are even accurate. We can't say it's fake because you have artists from these areas, so-called rap artists from these areas that speak about what goes on, and they glorify it. You can't tell me that's not by design. They have the influence. They're paid to influence. That's why they don't speak on nothing positive. They're paid agents to destroy. They're paid agents to influence evil. That's why they don't speak on anything positive. So once again, what do we see? Order out of chaos. And you have, people in Chicago, young dudes in Chicago talking about they sending some type of message to the military. Don't come out here. This is crazy. Talking about it's a different breed of people in Chicago. It's not like Los Angeles or nowhere else. Is different out here. So what are we about to witness? We about to see if the test subjects are going to react. The test subjects are going to fight back. What are we going to witness? One city was already done in DC, and you have a lot of people giving praise for that. And now you have other cities asking and pleading for this to come to their city as well. And then you got to look at the governance of those cities and states, and them saying they don't want that to come to their state, knowing that all this violence and things is taking place in these cities and states. Are they a part of it? Are they with it? That's why they don't want no interruption, because it's going to mess up their flow. All politicians are corrupt. Every last one of them. There's a piece of corruption there. Every last one of them. So with that, without veering into anything else, we're going to wrap it up with are we still subject to experiments? Think about it. Everything that we see going on, specifically with that music, with the drilling, and it is out of control. Never fails. Just last week. Eastern Parkway, West Indian Day Parade. 7 people shot. It never fails. Every single year. Nobody's learning nothing. It just gets worse. It gets worse. What are you celebrating? Death? With that, I say peace. Salute. Thank you for tuning in and rocking out. We'll be back next Saturday, God willing, with another one. Also, everything that was shared tonight will be in the description with a bonus video that I didn't play. So you can have everything and go watch the rest of the documentary. Very interesting, both of them. Just the notion that this was already known from back then. And it was already going on since the 50s. Until next week, God willing, Godspeed, peace, salute to everybody that tapped in. Much love and appreciation. Do you see what we see? God time. Peace.